This is Keys to the Shop, episode 285, Better Systems, More Connection, with RoasterTools founder, Jon Ewalt. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Keys to the Shop, where we give you insights, inspiration, and the tools you need to grow as a coffee service professional. My name is Chris DeFirio. I'm your host for the show. Thank you so much for joining us today. I think you're going to get a lot out of this episode. Are you subscribed to Keys to the Shop? If not, then hit that subscribe button and stay updated on the latest episodes. It would be wonderful also if you would share Keys to the Shop with your friends in the industry. It's a big coffee world out there, and there are still a lot of folks in the coffee industry who have never heard of Keys to the Shop, and you sharing the show either directly with them or over social media goes an extremely long way. Thanks so much. And if you love the show and get a lot out of it in the content, would you also take a minute to give a 5-star review for the show as well? That would make a huge difference. Thank you so much for supporting the shows in these ways. Now, do you ever just need to gain clarity or get direction or work through issues in your business? Well, that's exactly the kind of thing that Keys to the Shop Consulting can help you with through over-the-phone consulting and coaching. Now, I have a good number of clients who have signed up for a set number of calls to work through specific projects or problems that they need some help with. And we've been able to see a lot of great progress in just a few thorough and focused calls. Now, if you want to look into setting up these consulting calls for yourself, you can just email me and we can set up a free discovery call to see how Keys to the Shop Consulting might be able to help you. So just email me here, chris@keystotheshop.com. Again, for Keys to the Shop Consulting, it's chris@keystotheshop.com. Now, today's episode of Keys to the Shop is brought to you by Prima Coffee. Prima Coffee is one of the world's best specialty coffee equipment suppliers because they not only curate the best from all over the world, but they provide you with a lot of support and help you find the right equipment for your situation. Of course, equipment selection for your expanding coffee bar or your new coffee bar can be a daunting process. But whether you're in the market to upgrade your commercial equipment or just start off with the right equipment for you, Prima Coffee is set up perfectly to help you with that because their passion is helping you be successful in specialty coffee. And it shows in the kind of resources they have on their website, the kind of service they offer. And now you can get 5% off your entire order at prima-coffee.com/keys when you use the promo code KEYS5 at checkout. That's KEYS and the number 5 at checkout. And you get 5% off your entire order over at prima-coffee.com/keys. And that's a huge offer. You should definitely take advantage of that. And again, if you're looking to partner with somebody to outfit your business with the best commercial coffee equipment and work with great people in the process, then Prima Coffee is the one that I would choose. Go visit them again over at prima-coffee.com/keys. Today's episode is also brought to you by the Pacific Barista Series, which is the line of plant-based performance beverages that is basically the world's leader in plant-based beverages. They designed these for baristas and with a lot of substantive feedback from the world's best baristas. So by the time it makes its way to your counter, you'll have the comfort of knowing that this beverage performs the way as advertised. It stands up to the heat from the steaming process, provides you with amazing texture for latte art, and keeps the balance of your beverage focused on your coffee. Your customers are looking for the best experience, a special experience at your specialty coffee bar, and the Barista Series provides that in spades. No matter what you choose from their extensive lineup, you really can't go wrong. So I would encourage you to go to their website over at pacificfoodservice.com, get these in your store and try them for yourself. Whether you want to upgrade your existing plant-based beverages or you're just starting out and want to offer the best right from the beginning, the Barista Series is it. Again, check them out over at pacificfoodservice.com and see what the Barista Series can do to absolutely delight your customers. All right, well, if there's one thing that's certain, it's that as you grow your roastery, you're going to be pulled in 1,000 different directions, and the need to maintain the operations, drive sales, maintain relationships, improve quality, buy bags, all that stuff becomes overwhelming to the point where you're not even sure if growing is a blessing or a curse, unfortunately. Luckily for us, though, as the industry of roasting continues to expand, so too do the resources that we have at our disposal to help us beat the overwhelm and recapture our time and energy. In this category of resources, RoasterTools is leading the charge to help you streamline, optimize, and prioritize and focus on the right things in your roastery And that is what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking with the founder of RoasterTools, Jon Ewalt. I absolutely love Jon's story, and I love talking to him today. Now, as the founder of RoasterTools, which is an award-winning sales and operations software platform for coffee roasters, Jon spent his days strategizing, coding, and talking with coffee roasters on how they can get more coffee out of their door. Well, Jon isn't just another web developer who got a coffee bug. He spent 8 years building a successful roastery with his wife in Wisconsin, where they developed systems that helped his small team of roasters package and deliver thousands of pounds per week, which is a huge feat, and we're going to be talking about that in this episode. Well, they sold that business to focus on building software tools that help the roasting community, and that's how RoasterTools was born. Jon is passionate about helping other people avoid the mistakes that he made and on freeing up founders to spend more time with the things that help drive real change in their business, their team, their customers, and the coffee itself. So in today's conversation, we're going to be talking about Jon's history, of course, what led to the founding of RoasterTools, and what it does, and Jon's own views also on the state and future of the coffee roasting industry based on this experience, both personal and working with lots of world-class coffee roasters who use RoasterTools to help them do an amazing job, expand their businesses, but also increase their connection to their customers, which is what I think we all want to do. So I hope that it's eye-opening, encouraging, and again, I think you're going to get a lot out of it. So without further ado, here is my conversation with the founder of RoasterTools, Jon Ewalt. Well, Jon, welcome to Keys to the Shop. Really glad to have you on the show. How are you doing today?
Great, Chris. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, you know what? I have really loved what you've been doing at RoasterTools. I wonder if we could sort of start from the beginning. You and I have had a conversation a little bit ago, actually, about your history in coffee. And I think that was such a great experience that you had that kind of forms what you do now in your business. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Like, how did you get into the coffee industry? What's your background before RoasterTools, that is?
You know, Chris, I didn't really think that I'd ever own a coffee shop or own a coffee roaster or get into coffee, but I kind of backed into it. So my wife and I, we got interested in food and local food, and we decided to start a cafe in a small little town, far northern Wisconsin. It's 500 people big. So it's called Bayfield, Wisconsin. It's a tourist town. We ended up buying this cafe, and I previously had worked for financial firms. I'd done other things that were not related to food, and we decided that we'd go to a community that we could kind of put roots down and kind of explore what food meant to us and how we wanted to serve it to others and kind of create conversation. And so we did that, and then we realized that we weren't going to make any money and we weren't going to survive for more than a year or two if we weren't getting smarter. So we looked at our sales, and we quickly realized that we were selling 50% of what we sold was coffee, and food was probably like 25%. And so we kind of reorientated ourselves a little bit, took a hard look at it and said, hey, coffee is this thing that's growing. This is like 2008, 2007, 2008. And I'm originally from Portland, Oregon. And, growing up here, I knew about coffee. You could see Stumptown everywhere. You could see all the press that it was getting. It was part of the local culture. And all I knew was that coffee people geeked out and went really deep down the rabbit hole. And I was kind of nervous that I was going to get sucked down this rabbit hole and what was going to happen. And so we realized then, so we had 50% of our sales, we've got to do something. And it was the writing on the wall was, hey, coffee's our thing. And either we embrace it or we get out of this business. And what we did is we started getting, more into it, and quickly realized that we could probably make a business if we could sell coffee back to our customers who were in Minneapolis or St. Paul or Madison, Wisconsin or Chicago. And so I remember this one night, sitting there on the computer, looking through eBay, and I had spent probably the last 3 months trying to find a good roaster. And I was on all these forums and I was trying to figure things out. And eventually I just found this one that was seemed like an okay condition, and I pressed the bid button, and I won it for a really good price. But what I didn't know was that the roaster itself was pretty banged up, and I spent the next 5 years basically rebuilding that machine multiple times. And so I basically just I kind of like equated back to that moment of hitting the bid button as my point of no return when I got sucked down that rabbit hole. And I've been in coffee ever since. So we got that machine, and this was kind of our attitude. Once we decided that we were into it, we went all in. And I remember hooking up that machine. I never roasted a batch on a commercial roaster, and literally fired it up, roasted a batch, and I served that coffee to 1,000 people less than an hour later. And it was just like, let's go for it. Let's do this. What I didn't know though was all the things that went into actually running a successful roastery. And that is my true journey over the next 6 or 7 years.
So you're really trial by fire. I don't mean that as a pun, but there it is. It's really, you were getting your feet wet with running a coffee bar, and then you started roasting, and all of this has to be just stretching you enormously during this time as you're learning how to be profitable, how to do the craft of coffee in a professional setting. I mean, what kind of how did you turn the corner to become more competent in that? And describe the moment where you felt like, what I'm doing now versus then is actually working, and what was the difference?
I think it's a great question, because I remember we were like, okay, we got to improve our batch brewing game. We have to improve our espresso game. We have to make drinks faster so that customers are not disappointed. And then there was all of the bar work that we had to do, and getting better at that. And then we layered coffee roasting on top of that. And kind of like what you said, we dove in and we tried to do everything at once. And that was pretty hectic. So I remember, this is back when there wasn't as much online. And so again, we were scouring forums, trying to watch videos. So then we downloaded a PDF from Give Me Coffee. There's all of these moments where we were just learning literally one shot at a time. And then we realized that if we really wanted to improve this, we had to own the whole stack. We had to go from the beginning of the process, which is the roasting coffee, and that's where I started to spend more of my time. And I remember when, I'd roast a batch, and then my job was also to be the trainer for a cafe. So my wife actually ran the front of the house, but she delegated the training to me. And so, I jumped from the back of the building to the front, and I trained for 2 hours. And I remember, the moment when I actually enjoyed what I was making in the back of house, like the full circle, it was pretty amazing. And then, that was like just one act of improving our business and figuring out what to do, because, having a great product is a part of the equation. And I think we got to that point where we were consistent, we were solid, but we had to do more. And I think we spent another few years working on systems and processes and people and all of the things that go into making our cafe and our business run successfully. And so that was where we also spent a lot of time. And really that's the genesis of what I do today. Is I spent so much time just thinking about how do we improve what we do every single day. And a big part of that was we had this really seasonal business. So I mentioned that we were in a town of 500 people. Doesn't sound like much. It's not. That was actually what it said on the the little sign when you drive in, welcome to Bayfield. I think it was like 497 was the most I ever saw.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's like, how could we support, how could they support a business like ours? Big part of it was we were a tourist community, right? So we had basically a national lakeshore, and people came to kayak, and people came to go see like a music venue that seated 1,000 people. That's where I served that coffee that first day. So there was a lot happening during the summer. And so we would get these moments of just 90 days of sprinting, and then it would go down to almost nothing. and then back up. And that cycle would repeat every year. And so we had this opportunity to kind of look at our business and step back and say, okay, what are we doing right? And what are we doing wrong? And so it was those moments of clarity that kind of said, okay, if we want to go through and put more people through the bar, if we want to have, we want to improve our ratings on, for us, it was, travel sites and Yelp, what can we do to do that? And like, we took a hard look at all that kind of data. And over time, we got really, really good at the front of house. I often say this, but it's like, we did 100 transactions an hour for 8 hours straight, a little cafe that could. By the time that we sold, we had 2 registers going, we had 1 person on bar, we had a bar back, and everybody was sprinting for that 6-hour shift. And, a lot of what we were doing there was facilitated by the back of house and the coffee that we were producing and the branding that we had. And so all of these kind of pieces came together, but it was definitely a process. And, the biggest thing was you have to take it one step at a time. And that's what I think we did. And we were kind of allowed that freedom because we had this natural kind of seasonal cycle. And it allowed us to kind of iterate and get better and plan and redo the cafe physically, and then also, refigure our training out every year. So,
that's really interesting. The thing that comes to mind is the now closed, but always world famous El Bulli in Spain, the Fernan Adria, the famous chef who was like, I think, so I'm going to get this wrong, they had like 6 months or 5 months where they were serving, and then they closed down on purpose to research and develop their menu. And that was revolutionary. I'm not sure how many people do that now as a result of his example, but it's really interesting how you utilized the downtime to optimize the time when you were busy. And it seems like that optimization, you started developing these systems that would help anybody in that position. And it seems like that, that's the beginning of what we know now as RoasterTools. I mean, how did you pivot from the running of a shop and a roastery to developing these systems that other people can use in the form of RoasterTools?
Yeah, it's a great question. Being a summer destination like we were, folks like yourself, people that were on vacation that were connected to coffee would, invariably they'd smell the roasting, or they would pop back and see, our roaster, and they'd ask questions like, hey, Jon, like, how's it going? What's going on? I'm from, Kansas City, from Minneapolis, from wherever. And, that's one thing I love about coffee is that people are always awesome, and they're great, and they're friendly. And so, those conversations became friendships over the years. And, it became clear that we were doing something different, that I had built a different system. I was using different tools than I think other roasters. And so they kept on asking, well, how are you doing what you're doing? And by that time I was doing, we were doing 1,000 pounds a day out of 300 square feet of production space. And we had a UG22 back in the corner. We were so streamlined. We had 2-3 people who were roasting, and it was a sprint. And I'm not saying it was easy, but what we were trying to do was really improve our quality. It's that seasonal. Here's one way that you can take that seasonal break that we did and apply it to your roastery business right now. And I always advocate for this, that too often people are roasting 5 days a week when they don't need to. They need to create those seasons. They need to create those off periods to improve their game, to improve their product. And so what we would do is concentrate roasting in Monday and Thursday. And, the goal there was to create Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday to cup coffees, to learn, to improve. And so, when I told people how much we were doing in such a little space, it was like, they asked me, like, how could I do that? And especially with the number of people that we had, because I literally couldn't find, employees who wanted to work for our business, because we were at the end of a peninsula, jutting out into Lake Superior, in a town of 500 people that mostly was retirees. And so I was forced to develop these systems. I was kind of forced to think about, like, how are we going to scale to do, thousands of pounds per week when we have a tiny space not very many people that are going to be able to help us out. And so eventually, we'd been at this for about 8 years, and my wife and I looked at each other, and it was clear we'd burned out. We were growing so fast, and we were through this kind of boom and bust, this seasonal cycle, which it was important in the development of RoasterTools and important in developing these systems, but it was also really hard. It's hard to turn it on and flip a switch in May when the crowds start to arrive, and then to turn it off, or at least turn it down, in September. And so we said, hey, we're burned out. We need a break. We need to do something different. And so we ended up selling our business and moving back to the Pacific Northwest, which is where my wife and I met. And there was this big void. Like, hey, I built something that I was really proud of. The processes, the systems, the tools that I developed worked, and other people wanted it. Well, maybe I should just focus on that. And so that's what I've done. Since we sold that shop, I've been figuring out how to become a tech entrepreneur, not just be a coffee person, but also how do you build and support software, and dove into that part of the business. So
yeah, just you have the most unique background for developing something like this, whereas somebody tries to find a quote unquote pain point in an industry, and they answer it without very much empathy, and they just kind of like float in and say, congrats, I'm here, and that's to save you. But what makes your story unique is the story that you just told, that this was something you created for yourself. It was successful. People actually wanted you to tell them how to do these things, and now here it is. And so how did you describe now RoasterTools then, like the problems that it addresses? And obviously these were things that you walked through yourself, and problems that you had that you wanted to address. Like, what does RoasterTools do? And tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, RoasterTools is a sales and operations platform, and our goal is to streamline the business of coffee. So when you think about, what is the business of coffee roasters, it's selling to wholesale providers, it's connecting into, e-commerce sites, and, making it possible to scale the business through selling more, and then not losing customers in the operations process. And I always put that two different spots, because we want to increase sales as long as we can support them, and support them successfully. And so that's what the app does, is it helps people figure out what to roast, what to package, and who it should go to, without making mistakes. Because if you have the right data, and if your team's supported, they're able to do more than you ever expected.
So this is something that helps you scale and be efficient, but also avoid dropping the ball in burnout, the way kind of you were talking about the burnout that you had.
Yeah, and that's a big part of what we do now is we have a sales platform it's a wholesale portal that helps people streamline the sales process. Too often when I'm talking to other founders of coffee roasters, they've still have themselves as the central cog in that sales machine, because their the charisma, their personality, their connections has helped what to build and drive a business, but they're burning out, and so they're looking for a solution to support them and support the team, and to delegate some of that responsibility, and I think that's one of the key learning processes as a founder, as a leader, is learning when to delegate and then when not to. And if you're just providing a transactional email like, hey, Chris, do you need 5 pounds today? Sure. To me, that doesn't add value. And I think that's the perspective that we have with our sales platform.
So you mentioned something interesting there, and it was how to decide what to delegate and what not to, or what to automate and what not to. And I imagine the issues that roasters run into a lot is how to say goodbye to some of the things that it seems like maybe people have built their identity on. What is the the fear and the hurdle that people have to get over in order to take the next step into efficiency and let go of some of these things?
I think that there's, understanding that you need that evolution is okay. I think that's one of the things that that change is okay, that evolution is okay, that your customers will come along for the ride. I think accepting that you might lose customers is also part of that process. I'm a big fan of sustainability, but I also think that it's from the lens of your business has to be sustainable. And so, I think that for coffee roasters to decide what to delegate, decide what to automate, I think that they need to understand what adds value and embrace the automation, embrace the things that will help them scale. One of the things that I think that people often forget is that a real personal interaction is me saying, "Hey Chris, how are you doing?" And how's your day? And asking you questions and real interactions. And too often when I talk to coffee people who are in this, this one example of being stuck in the cog, the sales cog, and they're the ones who are processing transactions, or they're trying to be the salesperson as well as the founder. They're confusing those interactions, those transactions, as, in my opinion, as connection. And I think that real connection is not, just saying, "Hey, do you need 5 pounds today?" It's those other questions, and that it's like, going to visit them in this post-COVID world. All of those things I think are going to be where the real value is, and you have to kind of take a step back and hopefully weigh it out and see it for what it is.
So you need to invest. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. I mean, you have to invest in these, in stepping back in order to invest in people, if that's really what you want to do, right? You have to stop doing some stuff.
Yeah, and I think it's definitely want to, take a step back and understand that, one of the big lessons from my first 8 years in business was, this cycle of change. And being, one example is we serve food. You think about this origin story here, right? We started out and food was the thing that we were passionate about. Fast forward 4 or 5 years later, and we looked at the numbers and we looked at where the business was going, and we decided, what? Food's not sustainable for us. We have a hard time finding kitchen staff. All of these things were kind of like, we could be stubborn and just stick with it because it was what we always did. Or we could take a look at our business with fresh eyes and say, oh, you know what? We're a coffee company. And what goes well with coffee? Bakery, grab and go things. It's not made to order food. It's not the more involved things that we were focusing on for the first few years. And so we made this very hard, but ultimately very successful decision to cut out 25% of our sales.
But you gained it back.
We doubled the business. And that's the thing is that we had focus. We knew who we were, and I know on your podcast, you talk about values, and that was something that we embraced. It's like we clarified our identity and we doubled down on it. And our customers who aligned with those values and who aligned with that identity came along for the ride, and they were happier than ever. And the sales reflected that.
And it made it probably easier for you to make decisions like that. After making that first hard decision, you could probably make those decisions a lot easier afterwards.
Definitely. And we were scared. I mean, I'm not trying to make it like to simplify it, or not to say that it wasn't emotional or that we didn't have hard conversations, with either customers or our team. But, the benefit was that both my wife and I, we were aligned on this bigger vision. And in order to hit that bigger vision, in order to grow the business the way we wanted to, we had to focus. And so, that's kind of like an example of kind of making hard decisions and moving on. But I think that you can kind of look at your business every now and then, taking a step back giving yourself some space, going on like a founder retreat or something that's, basically hours alone to look at what you do and then come up with a new plan.
Sort of a self-imposed seasonal operation like you had to get that downtime.
Yeah, and we also had a 90-day, back to kind of one of our key features is we were using kind of like a business operating system that really focused on 90-day sprints, and that helped us as well. So there was other tools that we used, but that was a key one in terms of just kind of understanding the data and knowing when to make changes and then to give ourselves a deadline, that 90-day period to actually follow through with them. Fast
forward now, you've got a lot of clients that use RoasterTools and have been benefiting from the automation, delegating these tasks out to something that frees up their time, obviously provides more consistency. You, as a fly on the wall, I guess, have been able to witness the industry itself changing over time and the results of how you've been able to see RoasterTools impact other people's operations. So I wonder if you could just give us a bit of your perspective on both how the industry has been evolving and the impact of these systems on the operations of your clients, maybe the most common things that people end up saying as a result.
Yeah, that's a great question. The biggest change that's happened over the last 18 to 24 months is the rise of e-commerce. And it's changed the landscape with how people are selling and connecting with their customers. That's an opportunity that I think a lot of people are smart to double down on. So one of the ways that we help with that is we help you import orders in from systems like Shopify or BigCommerce or other platforms. And the big thing that people are trying to do is obviously 50 orders at $20 a pop is a very different business model than the wholesale world that we were all thinking about 3 years ago or 2 years ago now. And so that's probably been the biggest flip, and I'm curious to see what's going to happen going forward, and to see how this balance kind of evens out. And thinking about those orders, one of the things that I've witnessed that I've been surprised by is as people have shifted over to e-commerce, roasters are embracing ground coffee again. And that's one of those changes that I never expected to see. And when your customer doesn't have the proper grinder, you sometimes maybe make decisions that you would not have thought of before. And so, having 4 or 5 different grind options and, being able to support that is great. So, there's definitely some areas though where that can come into to bite your team if you're not careful, because as you're fulfilling those orders, the worst thing in the world is to send somebody a whole bean coffee who's expecting it to be ground, because that's could be 25 minutes of back and forth of emails and then resending some coffee out, and that whole bean coffee is just wasted. And that's one example of the unintended consequences of this shift to e-commerce is, hey, we're doing a lot of small transactions. We're supporting them at a scale we've never thought possible. And we need the right tools to do that.
Interesting. And I'm thinking as you're describing people offering ground coffee, I'm thinking along the lines of how people were offering half-gallon lattes and whatever it took to make money, because we realized, this is a serious problem. For better, for worse, it exposed a lot of fragility within the models of our businesses. And when we're talking about getting over the hump of giving some of these things away earlier, it makes me think, well, it almost feels like people are having an easier time doing that because they realize that, like you said, we need to be financially sustainable as a business in order to make a difference. And in order to connect with customers, you need to kind of get over yourself a little bit and not be as idealistic, I guess, in your brand. Like only whole bean coffee, you can always buy a grinder. I used to work for companies to be like, the only way that we'll sell you our coffee is if you buy a grinder. We're not going to grind it for you. And I'm sure there's companies out there still like that, but it seems like maybe we're a little bit more over the idea that we're actually selling our soul to the devil when we do that, when we pre-grind coffee.
I also think that there's, I don't have any data to back this up, but it's like, I wonder if the age of the coffee industry, we're getting older. I don't know if the average age is, but there's a generation like my generation. I started in coffee now, 12, 13 years ago, and I'm older now, and I have 3 kids who, my life changes are different, and I'm rushed and I don't have quite the same time. And so maybe I get somebody else's perspective on why they're choosing pre-ground coffee that I didn't understand back when my life was a lot simpler. So I think that there's something there, but maybe that's just a random theory. But then I'll also say that one of the key aspects, this is how I look at business. We actually built this into our brand. Our tagline was, "Our beans, your coffee," when I ran a roastery. And because I could control everything up to the point of it getting into the bag. After that, it's your offering. It's like your thing. Like if you wanted to put in a gallon of milk and a dropper full, a drop of coffee, that's your prerogative. And so I believe that we can only project those preferences and that approach so far before it gets a little bit invasive. But that's my personal opinion. And I think that some of the coffee world, at least, I'm hearing more about blends and I'm hearing more about ground coffee than ever before. And so I think that there's, like all things in life, things go in pendulums and they swings, and there's back and forth, and we learn every step of the way, hopefully, and get a little bit more inclusive. You really,
sure,
is a good goal. So
yeah, the more we connect, the more inclusive we get, the more we can relate. So absolutely, and we can go down that path quite a bit. But when you're looking at the landscape of your customers, I mean, what are they telling you, and what are you seeing in terms of like their operations and how people are actually running their businesses now? There's a lot of people jumping into the roasting game now, whether that's because they're buying bellwethers and that's an entry point for them, or they're just going the traditional route. There are a lot of people doing this. The roaster retailer model is booming. So the landscape might look a little different today than it did when you were roasting. And from your client landscape, like, what are you seeing? What are you hearing?
I think it's how complicated and how many different sales channels people are juggling right now. I think that's probably the biggest. It's, I don't know if it's not the biggest opportunity, but it's probably the biggest challenge. I talk to roasters and they're like, well, we're trying to get into this grocery store chain, and yet we're selling through multiple other websites that rep our coffee. We have our own website, we have our own wholesale portal, and then we have our internal cafes. And so I just named off 5 different real sales channels, and I think that that's both this challenge, and it's also it's the opportunity that a lot of those people that are just starting out see. They're like, oh, I could sell here, I could do this, I could do that. And I also think it weighs down these new roasters, is they look at all these opportunities and they don't know where to start. And they forget that, hey, not everything was built in a day. When you look at the brand that's over there, that maybe the people you were buying from, 6 months ago, they didn't start out selling on all these different sales channels. They probably had 1 or 2, and then they added another one, and then another one. And so I think that that's probably the biggest challenge, is that we look around and we see coffees everywhere, and we think we have to emulate that as a young startup roaster.
When in fact, it seems what you're saying is you should choose something that you can really do well, or a couple things that you can really do well and grow from there?
Yeah, I think that there's, going back to the story of when you focus on something, you can measure it, you can double down on it, you can devote resources to it. I mean, the founder who's doing too many things, who's also, the head of sales, there's probably gaps in what they should be doing, but it's just they don't have enough time. And so a lot of these efforts can just be like, hey, we only have time to focus on wholesale, so let's become the best wholesale roaster that we can. And oftentimes the success in one of those sales channels, what happens? The coffee buyer comes from the local grocery store chain, is like, hey, I see your coffee everywhere, I just tasted it, I saw it online, I saw your Instagram feed, whatever it is, and it spills over. And then you're not just going out and trying to find the next opportunity, but the opportunities start to come to you because you've succeeded in one or more channels. So I think that's how I would pitch it to startups.
Sure. It also makes sense that if you are really 100% in on that channel, or that limited choice that you're giving yourself, that your operations that you develop and the systems you develop around that will be able to scale better if you've devoted proper attention to them. Whereas you're talking about 5 or even 6 different sales channels right from the beginning, without much experience, you're just going to overload the system itself, even though you could fit it all in there. Technically, you can say yes to anything you want to say yes to, but the question is the system going to hold it up?
Exactly. I mean, one small example is if you're selling through, multiple platforms, if you have like local delivery, every time you add one of those new ways for coffee to get out of your shop to your customer, it takes time, it takes effort. And so it may sound like a great idea to say, hey, we're going to offer local delivery and we're going to go do a bunch of things, until you realize that that's probably you driving around those coffee orders at 5 o'clock when you'd rather be home with your family. Mm-hmm. And, so I think that there's a lot of dominoes that happen with each of those sales channels, with each of those decisions. And so if you limit the number of sales channels in this example, you've also limited how far out those dominoes will reach and how many unintended consequences you could have. I'm a big fan of simplicity.
Yeah, well, I mean, what's that term? The minimum viable product. You have something that works, make it work until it's absolutely obvious that you need to do something else, like need to, and not just reflexively pile more stuff on because we're just going to, shoot first, aim second type of thing, which I hear a lot of, owners do, and people who are in that hustle culture who just want to grind it out and say, yes, we'll figure it out as we go. And maybe there's some merit to that, but there is a lot of logic that you have to use and reason in the systems if you want to be actually, again, sustainable as a business. Yeah,
the over optimization of things is a curse that I think a lot of people, myself included, it's something that I have to pull myself back from. And it's something that I talk to roasters, who are either just starting out and they've got, steps 99 through 107 figured out, but they often forget the steps 1 through 10. And so, let's figure out where you are, make the next, bits of gain, and then just continue the process and keep on going, and you'll get there. I think that's the biggest thing. Is I believe that if you're intentional and you're thoughtful, you'll get there. And there's room in this world for so many coffee brands. There's, it's reflective of the diversity we have, in the consumer. And so let's embrace that and not look at it as like our opportunity where our window is going to close. Just give it time and let it bake, and you'll be fine. That's my theory.
Wise words. So what's been the most encouraging aspect of running RoasterTools, developing the software and seeing it work for people?
I think that it's funny. I talk about automation and I talk about systems and kind of all of this kind of technical stuff. But the best part is when you talk to somebody and they're like, I used to spend, 15 hours of my week doing something. And now I have that time back. And I hated that part of my job. I think that's what I love to do is I look at all that tedious work that people are doing right now. And I think, hey, let's take that off your plate, because if that's if you want to spend more time with your family, great, go do that. If you want to go grow your business because now you can do the sales, which is what, one of our roasters was telling me about. She's like, hey, I now have the ability to go do outreach, where before I was basically processing, orders every day. And so that gives me joy. Like that is meaning that like, hey, there was a blocker. There was something that was keeping you from growing your business or doing the things that you wanted to do. And I was, just one more tool to help you kind of get around that obstacle.
Nice. Helping people love coffee more by hating it less.
Yes. I'm going to quote you on that.
There you go. Well, this has really been fun to talk with you. I really appreciate your story and what you do for the community. What's on the horizon for you and RoasterTools?
That's a great question. We're working really hard on operations, and so kind of like improving that, making it more flexible. The diversity of roasters that are using RoasterTools is growing, and that's causing us to really focus on how we can help roasters from startups, all the way through to kind of like the bigger enterprise, kind of regional and national roasters. So, my team and I, we've been working hard on delivering more features to make the system more user friendly, but at the same time more powerful. And then, the other thing that we are really working hard on and kind of realize is that this pendulum is going to swing back from the e-commerce world. Perhaps not all the way. Traditionally a roaster would be doing 85% of their sales through wholesale and about 15% through e-commerce. And I think that's not what's happening today, but the wholesale world's going to come back. And so we're trying to lay the foundation for making our wholesale portal and making our wholesale experience the best possible experience for roasters to sell their coffee. And so that's our other focus through the rest of this year.
Wonderful. Yeah, I would echo that too, because, from my perspective as a consultant as well, a lot of people are interested in and actively opening new coffee businesses, especially right after COVID and even in the midst of it. So you're right on there. Well, Jon, where can we go to learn more about RoasterTools and sign up, et cetera? Yeah,
so RoasterTools.com is the best place to check us out. You can also sign up for our newsletter there. We send out content. I talk a lot about, whether it's my own experiences or just the things that I'm hearing in the industry and trying to help roasters, think about their business in different ways and help them overcome those obstacles.
Beautiful. Thanks so much. This was a great conversation. I really appreciate you, Jon.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I really appreciate the time and it's been great to chat.
All right. Well, I hope that you enjoyed that conversation. One of the main takeaways here for me is the idea that we can automate certain things in the process and kind of curate that automation to work for us. And that delegation isn't just about giving jobs to people, but it's also making processes a little bit simpler that don't necessarily feed into that idea of meaningful conversation, connection, which is, again, what drives RoasterTools and what Jon is trying to accomplish there. And I think there is something to be learned there as you expand your operations, thinking about how to let go of certain things in a way that they don't become just loose and chaotic by utilizing tools like RoasterTools and delegating to staff and really thinking about what's important and valuable in your business. It's going to help you direct your energy in the right places so that you're not just expanding, but you're also rooting down, building foundations. So a big thank you to Jon for joining us on the show and sharing your insights and experiences with us. Now, if you want more information about RoasterTools, you can just go to their website, roastertools.com, and follow them on Instagram. Their handle there is just @RoasterTools. Now, another resource that's out there for you to take advantage of to help you run a great cafe or roastery is Coffee Fest trade shows happening 4 times this year in San Antonio, Atlanta, Anaheim, and Portland, Oregon. Live shows are back. I'm really excited. I'll be at all 4. I work for and with Coffee Fest as an instructor, a latte art judge, also providing lectures and presentations throughout the show. And I will tell you, I've been doing this since 2004. Coffee Fest has been around for over 25 years, and it is absolutely the best event that you could attend. If you want to be a successful coffee retailer, there is an enormous amount of free presentations, affordable workshops, an amazing trade show floor, and a great community that gathers every time Coffee Fest comes around. And so if you want more information about this and want to join us at one of these 4 shows, go to coffeefest.com and click on one of those locations to find out more information, and also stay tuned for Coffee Fest 365, which is the new online learning platform that Coffee Fest is launching very soon. Again, that is Coffee Fest 365. Learn everything you need to know about Coffee Fest over at coffeefest.com. Now, if you have any questions, comments, or feedback for me about this episode today or any other episode of Keys to the Shop, just email me, chris@keystotheshop.com. Also, that is the email to use if you're interested in working with Keys to the Shop Consulting, chris@keystotheshop.com. And with that, that is the end of our show. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining me. I really appreciate you listening, tuning into these shows. Thank you for your support in subscribing and sharing these episodes. Closing in on 5 years of Keys to the Shop. Couldn't do it without you. Have an amazing day, and as always, I hope that this episode has truly given you keys to the shop.